Hello, hello, everyone. I see there are a few people already watching. So if you're here, go ahead and say you're here. This is going to be a good topic. Who was your original narc? So let me see if anyone's having an issue here. You're here. Okay, I was just going to message you. You made it on. Yes, I was coming on. I was coming on. I think I mess up the time zone all the time. I'm Central Time, and a lot of people are on Eastern. So I'm still working on the time zone. So, who was the original narc? So, this is always a very interesting topic because a lot of people, when they have begun to experience abusive relationship time after time and it becomes a repeated pattern, that is the time people will take a step back and why do I keep attracting the same types of people into my life? Why is it that all of the relationships I have been unhealthy? I've asked myself that, like I've had quite a few relationships that were very controlling. Why is it that I'm attracting that same type of person? So it's in that moment that you need to really take a step back. And what about the traits that you're attracting? And I'm thinking the romantic traits. It can even be friendships as well. Some of us have abusive friendships, right? I've had that as well. What is it about that person that is attracting you to them? So for a lot of us, it's the feeling of being safe. If you have that friend, for example, who's quick to speak up if something is wrong, or they're always coming to your defense, and you feel like they stand up for me, this is a good friend. But then on the alternative, on the other side of things, behind closed doors, they're very judgmental, very critical of you. In that moment, you see that friend as a loving person. And oftentimes we'll see someone as loving, but even their really glaring, terrible traits, the red flags about them will begin to accept because there's something loving about them. And even if it's just a little piece, a little smidgen of something that's loving about that person, we accept them for who they are and we love them. Looking back, and it always goes back to your childhood. Go back to your childhood. Was there a moment when someone who was in authority position, someone who was in a position of uh, giving love, showing love, allowing you to understand what love is, was there a time when that person did something that was abusive? Something that made you second guess yourself, something that made you feel like you had to walk on eggshells? Think back. A lot of times it's a parent, a lot of times it could be a sibling, someone who was constantly picking at you. You were never good enough. They were always, you could bring home a B plus, and they're like, well, A minus. Someone who made little remarks, you're gaining weight. You need to stop eating. You need to watch what you're eating. Or uh, making you just really feel like you would never amount to anything. And you spent a lot of time trying to prove to them that you were worthy of their respect, that you were worthy of their attention. You became a people pleaser at a very young age. Because if you notice how children are when they're trying to get a parent's attention, sometimes they act out, sometimes they're just really loud. They'll do a lot of things just to say, hey, look at me, I'm here, I'm here. But for those of us who were experiencing neglect, who didn't get that attention, we jumped at the opportunity when someone finally did show us attention. Unfortunately, that little person, that child grows up into be an adult. And we'll start to realize those traits never left us. So if you began to develop these people pleasing traits, I want to please you, I'm codependent, maybe you became trauma bonded to that parent, to that sibling, to that family member. And a trauma bond looks like, yes, I'm being mistreated, but I can't leave. Yes, I'm not getting what I want out of this relationship, but I'm giving them everything that I can. Yes, I'm putting all their needs first, and I don't care anything, I'm not putting any of mine first. That is a trauma bond. And for some of us, we had that parent or that sibling or that family member who we just wanted their attention. We just wanted their adoration, their love, their respect, and they made us work for it. They made us work for it in a way that you should never have to work for that type of love, for that type of attention. And you began building your relationships on how can I please people? If I could just show you that I'm everything that you need me to be, you won't leave me. If I can even do things for you, yes, it'll inconvenience me. Yes, I don't want to do it, but I don't want to lose your friendship. And unfortunately, we begin to attract people who see that and use that. They take advantage of that. They know you would do anything for them. And here you go now, you find yourself maybe in a marriage or in a romantic relationship, and you found someone who you love and who you felt loved you, but they're just giving you little pieces. They're giving you little crumbs to make you feel that you have to keep working for their attention. It's never enough. Nothing you do is ever enough. You learn how to walk on eggshells. You learn how to navigate. But there was something about that parental figure. There was something about that sibling, that family member that you were used to. You ever hear the term, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know? So you know that people who exhibit this type of behavior, yes, it makes you feel badly about yourself. Yes, it makes you anxious. It makes you nervous. They're just being in their presence. Some of us as an adult have hard times being in the presence of our fathers, of our mothers, and we're adults, right? Because that child in you was never healed. So when you're around that person, even as an adult, that child in you is still cowering, is still afraid, is still feeling anxious around that person. But because they're a parental figure, because they're a sibling, because they're a family member who's close to us, there's that familiar security. Even if it's not healthy, it's a familial security. So we take that into adulthood and we get a false sense of security by someone because there's some traits that reminded us of our dad. There's some traits that reminded us of our mom. And we knew how to navigate that because all of our lives, what we've been doing was navigating landmines. We've been navigating the eggshells. I know that if I do this, it'll set them off. So I won't do that. I've learned that if I do this, it'll make them laugh. Some of us will exhibit that in becoming funny, the jokester, nothing bothers us. We're just, go with the flow type of people because we've learned how to navigate difficult situations. We've learned how to navigate and accept abuse. So that's why when you meet someone and they're giving you all the signs of what you're used to growing up or what you've seen in your childhood, there's a little something about that that's oddly comfortable because it's familiar. And you think to yourself, I can love them through this. Just like when you were a child and you were trying to bring home straight A's or maybe doing all your chores or doing whatever you could to get that approval, you start going above and beyond. And now you're in a romantic relationship. You're doing 120% of the work and they're barely doing 10 or 15%. But you feel if I just keep picking up their load, if I can just keep showing them that I'm worthy, maybe they'll start treating me better. So, who was the original narcissist? Who was the original abuser in your life? Who was that original person who made you feel like you had to work for love, work for respect, work for adoration? Who was that person? And then what are the things that they said to you when you were growing up? I say this all the time. A lot of times we don't realize the thoughts that we have are not our own thoughts. A lot of the thoughts or the negative feelings we have about ourselves or things that chip away at our self-confidence are things we heard when we were younger. I remember hearing, I had to figure out, why am I so obsessed with dieting and exercise and weight loss? And I remember from a very young age being told by an uncle, you're gaining weight. You're going to be big. No one's going to want you. You need to stop eating. And I never addressed that. I never fixed that. And then I became an adult and I had a very unhealthy relationship with food until I figured out what the issue was. But in that moment that I had an unhealthy relationship with food, I also linked up with a romantic partner who used that whenever he wanted to have control. Or you want to eat that? I thought you were on a diet. Did you work out today? There was an element of control. And yes, it made me feel uncomfortable. Yes, it made me feel that I was, never going to be thin enough. I wasn't, good enough. And this is a very small example, but I'm sure many people can relate to this. I still kept that person there because I felt if I could just get smaller, then maybe he'll see me as someone who's desirable, someone who's worthy of attention. But that was something that I dealt with in childhood that was never addressed. So what is it that you had to do? What is it that you were doing to prove that you were worthy, to prove that you deserve respect? What was that? We really have to sit with ourselves sometimes. And when we're asking the question of why is it that I keep attracting the same type of person, the better question really is what characteristics, what traits about that person are attractive to me? What that then does, that gives you power. Because saying, why do I attract this type of person is almost removing that power from you and saying that you don't have control over who comes and goes in your life. And that's not true. Everyone has that control. But what about that personality is attractive to you? I've heard clients say that they were attracted to someone because, yeah, they were mean to everyone else, but they were always nice to me. And because they were always nice to you, you felt that there was something about you that was above the others who were mistreated. Yeah, he's a jerk, he's rude to everyone else. She's rude to everyone else. She's nasty. But to me, she's nice. And it made you feel that you were worthy. It made you feel that in that moment, you were in some way better than the other people who were being mistreated. But what we forget is that eventually it becomes our turn. Eventually they turn on us. So what was it about that person being mean to others or being nice to you that was attractive? Was it a false sense of security? Was it finally getting that validation that you didn't get before? So really, and I'm going to keep coming back to this question, really think, who was that original person? Because it had to have been someone who impacted you, where the red flags were not enough to be like, I don't even want to go further in this relationship. You're calling me at all hours of the day. You always want to FaceTime with me. You're always asking where I am, who I'm with. You're very controlling. Because a lot of times we see those things early on. We just choose to ignore them or look past them, hoping that they'll change. Gaslighting ourselves. Yes, this is happening, but is it really happening? This person really loves me. He's only calling me. She's only calling me all the time because they love me. They care about me. They want to make sure that we're safe. And if in that moment you didn't have that parental figure who cared about if you were safe, who would let you do whatever you wanted to do, and you didn't really feel that my mom, my dad is protecting me, when you start to see that in a romantic relationship, it'll feel like security initially. It'll feel like that person cares about you. But really, that's a false sense of security. So I hope this is making sense. I hope you're understanding that. And please utilize the chat. If you have questions that you want me to dig a little bit deeper into, go ahead and utilize the chat. It is working. I see someone put something up that you're here. But these are things to consider. And I'm going to look up the Meetup app too. So I do this often during the live too, just to make sure that no one has commented anything that I look past. So I challenge you to really take a step back. Even I'm a journaler, I'm a writer, I love to do that. Make a list of all of the traits that initially attracted you to that person. Make a list of that. It could be charismatic, romantic, attentive, whatever the list is. Make a list of everything that attracted you to that person. And then on the other side of that paper, I want you to write all of the red flags. And 9 times out of 10, those red flags are going to align with the traits that you were attracted to. Charisma is an amazing trait to have. Being attentive is an amazing trait to have in a healthy relationship. But in an unhealthy relationship, it can be manipulated, it can be abused. Some of you guys who are watching this now might have even told your romantic partner some of the things you experienced in childhood, some of the abuses you've went through with past partners, thinking that you can trust that person. And the first time you had an argument, the first time you did something they didn't like, they threw it back in your face. But we still stayed. The first time they showed you they couldn't trust you, it was very reminiscent to something we experienced in the past that was never healed. And I'm saying this as a person who's done it myself, who's had things thrown back at me from childhood, from other past romantic partners. And I still stayed because I was like, well, at least this person remembered what I told them. Let's talk about some type of, crazy thinking there. Yes, you use that to turn it against me, but at least you listened to me. And I'm being vulnerable and sharing mine, but what's your story? What is that first time that happened to you? And in that moment, was that a deal breaker? A part of recognizing who your original narc is also recognizing your deal breakers, your boundaries, and enforcing them. Because you can have boundaries, but if they're not enforced, it's just a fence with holes in it that anyone can come through and go. You have to enforce those boundaries. And I see someone here saying, yeah, everything I use against them. Because, and one thing we'll notice too, and one thing I've noticed, so I don't, you can share if this has happened to you as well. A lot of times with someone who has a narcissistic personality disorder, emotionally abusive personality, they have a way of allowing us to share, to overshare. So we'll share information that we really shouldn't be sharing just yet, because it's still kind of early. We're probably still in the love bombing stage. And then we take a step back, we'll say, I still don't really think I know a lot about you. I married someone I didn't know a lot about. I thought I did. But I gave them everything about me. And you know why? Because it was a sense of they're listening to me. They care, they're listening. But really, in that situation, if it's not a healthy person, they're really using it for ammunition. Were you listened to as a child? Did your opinion matter? Did your voice matter? Were you shut down all the time? Were you kind of made to stay in a child's place? You weren't allowed to speak up for yourself. And the first time someone says, talk to me, you can talk to me. I'm here for you. I'm going to listen to you. How did that make you feel? That's where the trauma bond comes into play. A lot of times, what we're attracted to is someone who will help soothe the wounds that were never healed. We're not necessarily attracted to that person, but we're attracted to how they can make us feel, which can be very dangerous when it comes to your emotions, your mental health, your life, your future. We let people in because it feels good. And that's why in a narcissistic relationship, the moment it no longer feels good, the moment they start to really wrench at us and get to us, it's a big shocker to us because we've laid everything on the table. We felt we finally found someone who was really we could trust with our emotions and our feelings. And you should have felt that way, especially if you marry that person, especially if it's a romantic partner or a close friend. You should feel that way. But unfortunately, manipulative people, they smell that out. They can tell that there were some wounds that are still healing, that haven't quite been healed, and they use that against you. And many people that I talk to, whenever I ask the question of how did you get here? Who was that original person who made you feel like you weren't good enough? It goes back to childhood. It goes back to a parental figure, to a grandparent, to an uncle, an aunt, a sibling. It goes back because that's what shapes us into who we are today. And until we deal with that, we will continue to allow that personality, that disorder, that disruptive behavior back into our space because we haven't quite figured out what it is. And it's in that moment when you figure out, okay, I'm attracted to my father. I'm attracted to my mother. Yeah, my mom mistreated me, but she loved me. She was my mom. Yeah, my dad made me feel like crap, but he always provided. Love is unconditional. There is no but, right? And love doesn't hurt. So if the person is doing all of this to hurt you under the guise of, but I love you, that's already manipulation at play. So again, who was that original narcissist in your life? Who was that original abusive person in your life? And what role did they have in your life? What role do they play now? Do they play a role? Were there any similarities between the relationship you just left and the relationships you fostered in your childhood and your adulthood in the workplace with your friends? Are there any similarities? Because narcissists aren't just romantic. We can have friends who are narcissists. We can have bosses, employees, church leaders, spiritual leaders. I mean, there are no bounds. But if there's a personality that we're attracted to, we're going to keep allowing that person in because there's an element of safety. Yes, the aftermath is terrible, but it's very akin to an addict looking for a high. We're looking for that next high. And it feels good until it doesn't. But acknowledging and figuring out what is it that I'm attracted to? And it's not a physical thing. There is something personality-wise that attracts us. So I encourage you all to make that list, like I said in the beginning, make a list of what you were attracted to, and then a list of the red flags and see what lines up. If you could think back as far as you can, what lines up? Because I always say you think you're here because of the relationship that just ended, but you're here because of something that happened way before you even met that person. And what is that something? And if you're here and in this moment now, you've gotten to the end of yourself and you're ready to get to that next step and you're trying to figure it out. And you have the answers, right? It's just a matter of that aha moment, like, got it, is validation. Wanting to belong, wanting to feel loved, wanting to feel needed, wanting to feel wanted, whatever your want is, your need is. Without it being in the right hands, it'll surely be used in a detrimental way that will hurt you. And unfortunately, a narcissist's path is that of destruction. Every person they leave behind them is a trail of destruction. But recognizing your triggers, recognizing how you got here, recognizing what you're attracted to and what's attractive about that will help you as you continue to heal. So if you're here in part of the meetup group, I'm assuming everyone is because this was a private link unless you shared it. Go ahead and make sure you subscribe because I'm going to put, I put videos up here all the time and I usually like to notify you guys whenever I put things up. But that way also, if you came in a bit later, you can go back and watch and listen to anything that was said before you got on. Sometimes for me, I like to hear things a couple of times until it resonates. And then I'm like, okay, I got it. So that way you can just kind of keep going back and listening to it. I also want to say that for those of you who are new, I know we have a lot of new people. We had about 12 or 13 people join this month already. If you are past the fact-finding stage and looking for the healing stage, I highly recommend you check out the course. I highly recommend you check out the Healing Loudly course because this is a part where you do deep work on you to figure out how you got here and how you can move forward. But this is only for you if you are no longer in the fact-finding stage, which basically means what is narcissism? What just happened? What's going on? When we get out of that, we become, like I say, Google scholars. We're trying to figure out the hell that just happened. And that's the process in of itself. That education validates you and lets you know you're not crazy. What you experienced did happen and it wasn't okay. We need to be validated. And that's where the education comes from. But once you've gotten, because there are phases in healing and you're moving forward. So once you've gotten past that part and you're looking to really do some work on yourself, check that out because it helps. I was there. I was absolutely there. So thank you guys all for watching. I hope you got some good information out of this. I hope it was very helpful. And I really, really encourage you and challenge you to make that list. It'll be so helpful to you. Figure out what those traits are that attracts you and why. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to post it so that you can catch the replay. Have a great day.